If it wasn't already bad enough that teachers are wanting to be throwing their entire profession away if they hear one more Hawk Tuah joke from a 9-year-old who doesn't understand what the fuck he's saying, or for the fact of children are academically behind at an alarming rate. Once something presents itself as being the slightest bit difficult for these kids, a lot of them just aren't showing the resilience to continue going on. Which is, just by the way, really concerning. Or what about the fact that a lot of this comes from parents not parenting anymore? Whether it be due to working multiple jobs at once and not being able to attend the parent-teacher meetings for the kids, or chucking an iPad with full access to the great big wide web because you just can't be bothered with the kids you chose to have. And look, to a degree, I completely understand giving the kids an iPad. I mean, seriously, how do parents deal with this? As a 23-year-old who is quite outspoken on never having children, how do y'all do it? But all of this baggage seems to be falling onto a teacher's desk every single morning without failure. This video today is sponsored by me. Just with my girl right now, she loves my I Heart Drama Queen drip. If you love me just as much as I love you, cop the I Heart Drama Queen shirt down below. I really do love Drama Queen. Why so serious? I Heart Drama Queen, merch link down in the description box below. Teachers on TikTok are talking about how Gen Alpha are the most out of control kids they've had to put up with in their entire profession. Some even going as far as to say that they can't read, they can't write, they definitely can't spell, and their resilience below hell. Let's not forget about the violent behaviors that a lot of these students are presenting within the classrooms that are just getting a little too hard to deal with. Because, I mean, if the parents don't really want to attend to that kind of behavior, then yeah, they're gonna carry that into school every single day. And you know, I had somewhat of an idea that Gen Alpha seems to be struggling in the classroom at the current moment, but I had no idea that it was this bad.
I'm experiencing something that is really getting on my last damn nerves. So basically, I'm a teacher, I do supply work, I work in various different schools. I've been teaching for like 10 years. I've been in the game for 10 years, and before that I was a teaching assistant, so I've been in it even longer than 10 years. One thing that I'm noticing, this generation Alpha, bloody hell, they are a piece of work. And I'm seeing some teachers in America saying this, but so I work in year 2, and oh my God, I feel victimized by some of these 6 and 7-year-olds. Like, they don't listen, they're violent as hell. Their academic abilities are so much lower than I've seen in my previous teaching years. They're helpless. You ask a question, they're just staring at you. They still can't form their letters. Like before, in a class of 30, you might have had maybe 5 or 6 students that, you know, needed support to access the curriculum. Now it's like the other way around. You have 5 or 6 students that can access the curriculum, and then the rest of the class really struggles. You know, when I was in school, certain subjects like math really used to be quite difficult for me to get a hang of learning. And it was when my mum actually suspected that I may have ADD, and that could be the reason as to why, no matter how hard I try doing maths, I just can't understand it. Yeah, shout out algebra! Shout out algebra! And hey, maybe ADD wasn't the issue, and it was a subject in of itself that really didn't interest me. Because I still passed and everything, I needed that extra time to understand what the algebra is, but it seems to be that this is not what's happening here. Gen Alpha parents, for the most part, seem to have this huge anxiety whenever it comes to trying to discipline their kids. Because maybe they grew up and they copped the belt or the spoon or even the thong. No, not that thong, okay, Aussie, oi, oi, oi. And that to them seems like the only way to quote unquote discipline their
kids whenever they're to do something bad. But hey, newsflash, guys, we don't need to be hitting people because they did something wrong. Like, would you go up to your mum because she forgot your birthday and slap her across the face? I mean, probably not. So why are we doing that to kids? But this is a part of the reason why this kind of stuff is happening within the classrooms. It's because at home, they run the show and they think that when they get to school, they don't have to listen to any kind of authority. And look, I am anti-authority. I hate authority as much as the next person. I'm actually the kind of person, and anyone in my life, personal life, can vouch for this. Whenever someone tells me not to do something, I do it anyways because... But because these parents are so scared to deal their children out consequences, they're taking this poor behavior to school. They're making it all the teacher's problem at this point. And to a certain degree, some of these parents seem to be advocating for the decline in their child's growth. Despite all of this, it is not normal whatsoever for a class full of 30 children to only be having 5 doing well. What that is telling us is that there are problems behind the scenes that are yet to be addressed, that are, what would you say, affecting these kids academically. And look, if a kid isn't listening to their parents at home, what makes you think they're going to respect a teacher's voice? They're just not.
It is bizarre. I don't know how we're raising them or what on earth is going on, but they can't manage their emotions. They're throwing tantrums left, right, and center. They hide under tables, they storm out, they don't listen to instructions. You tell them something and they just mock you and repeat after you what you've just said. They don't be quiet. It is stressful as hell. Like, it makes you contemplate walking out of the profession because it is just too much.
Gen Alpha having a problem with emotional regulation isn't something that's new or out of the ordinary even, because they are constantly given what they want. They have a silver platter whenever they're to open up the iPad of anything that gives them instant gratification. So if something presents itself to be the slightest bit boring, no, hands in the air, I don't want to do this. And not to sound like boomerish or anything, okay, but it feels like when I was these kids' age, which honestly was not that long ago, I felt like I didn't have a choice when I arrived at school. I feel like I had to learn. So obviously there is this clear generational difference where it's like, it seems to be that the schooling system kinda just isn't working for these Gen Alpha kids. And that also needs to be addressed too. Like, if the same old ways, doing it by the book, is just not working for an entire new generation, maybe that book should be revised. But that's another separate issue in of itself. Like, even a slight no ruins their entire day and they start having a tantrum over it. It can even be as simple as saying, hey, I think it's time that we go to bed now. It's 10:30 and you're only 10. Let's, get some Z's. And boom, the child is calling you names, insulting you, treating you like you've just violated them, whilst the parent is just taking it on the chin, showing the child, actually, I can get my own way by doing this. It's sort of like that confirmation bias, right? Where it's like, okay, if this happens enough times, it's always gonna happen, isn't it? And again, I'm gonna be sounding like an old head, but I remember when I was a kid and being told no was not that big of a deal as it's made out to be today. And once again, there's not much of a gap between Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Hell, it's the generation that has just come after Gen Z. So this is why it's kind of boggling my mind how fast everything seems to be moving. Gen Alpha can't read, Gen Alpha can't write, Gen Alpha can't spell, Gen Alpha can't sound out words. Like, it is crazy. And with the younger Gen Alpha kids, it truly seems like they do not know how to be calm. Ever heard screen maxing? This is a prime example of a child who is overwhelming themselves by having 2 screens present to try and focus on. I'm sorry, but why the does a kid need 2 screens to focus on? Where did they even get these 2 phones from?
What? What's gonna happen? What's gonna happen?
this actually really gets to me as somebody with anxiety who tends to overwhelm themselves also with multiple screens. Yeah, call me a Gen Alpha the way I be on my phone with YouTube in the background because I'm trying to drown out these thoughts, bro. They eat me alive. No, but I can acknowledge that that is a problem. I am doing that because I am trying to make myself feel almost empty, almost no emotion whatsoever, right? And it's like, I'm a 23-year-old adult with mental health issues. That is a toddler. They do not need to be acting like that. And I'm not saying that I'm a 23-year-old adult who has mental health issues. That behavior for me is okay. No, it's actually not okay for the both of us, for a 23-year-old or a toddler. Because what that kind of behavior is essentially doing, it's rotting our brains to its core. Us humans were meant to feel things. We were meant to feel emotions no matter how bad it may seem. Now, that obviously doesn't apply to everybody because everybody's situation is different. I'm mostly speaking for myself here. But this kind of screen maxing that Gen Alpha is doing at the moment is super unhealthy because we're not supposed to be distracted like this all the time, especially as a toddler. And I know many of you at home as well tend to be screen maxing whenever you're in a mental health episode, but you know how not good you feel after doing that, how absolutely just worthless you feel. You're like, I just spent 4 hours of my precious life watching fucking TikToks. They didn't do anything for me. I didn't learn anything from them. And I've just lost 4 hours of my precious time. Now imagine what that is doing to a toddler's brain. Like, why are these kids overwhelming themselves with this kind of screen time? Why does a 3-year-old even have access to 2 phones at once? If this isn't emotional irregulation, I don't know what is at this point. And it's highly concerning just how many children we are seeing who are screen maxing like this. And I hate to even be using the term screen maxing, but it's kind of for a lack of better term.
Why do you need 2 screens?
Because I can't watch YouTube on this one.
Why do you need to be so overstimulated that you need to watch 2 things at once, though?
I don't. I just like watching 2 things at once.
You're crazy, dude.
Thank you.
So it looks to be that the kid was watching a brain rot YouTube short and playing a game that involves little to no problem solving skills whatsoever. This kid wasn't reading, wasn't trying to solve an issue through the game, no. Simply just rotting their brains with overstimulation by using 2 screens at once. Why? Why is this? I keep coming back to the exact same question. Why exactly do these kids need multiple screens at once? That's right, they don't. So maybe can we kind of like stop this? It's not funny. This is exactly why it's hard for these kids to focus in school, because it's boring. They don't have 2 screens feeding them absolute rubbish for 6 hours a day. And people are wondering why they're seeing teachers over on TikTok crying out for help for parents to pull their heads in so that they, I don't know, don't feel pressured to leave a lifelong career that they've dedicated their entire beings to. But if you think screen time isn't affecting the average academic level of a Gen Alpha student, think again, because not one of these kids can seem to spell restaurant.
Spell restaurant.
R-E-S-T.
Nope.
No. R-E-S-T. Oh, wrong.
You're so close.
R-E-S-T-E-R. Give it. E-R. R-E-S-T-U-R-A.
Nope.
What?
Nope. Oh, you're not spelling it?
R-E-S-T-A-U-R-A-N-T.
Thank you.
This tells me these kids aren't even using the basics of sounding out words. Rest or rant. Rest rant. And you know, one thing that I'm really tired of hearing is that Gen Alpha as a generation collectively has learning difficulties, therefore that is why they are struggling inside of the classrooms. That, just by the way, isn't true. Just like how it isn't true that Gen Alpha collectively struggles inside of the classrooms on a constant basis. The problem is ever so present, but when it's called out, apparently we just don't understand what it's like to be a parent. Funny story that I personally have of Gen Alpha kids that only took place a couple of weeks ago when I was in Queensland for a few days. Let me set the scene. My boyfriend and myself are at this really romantic style Italian restaurant. It's a really tight, really close-knit, really intimate kind of restaurant where you're kind of sitting really close to different people. And I had a rather unpleasant experience. There were 3 children sitting right behind me, like that much space between me and these kids, okay? They were very loud, they were very chaotic, and at one point, I felt somebody tapping my back. And of course, I look over and I give looks like, what is going on? Oh, we have what looks to be 2 very depressed parents that are just absolutely fed up with the day, because at this point, it's around 7:30 at night, and one of the kids actually points to my alcoholic beverage on the table and is like, I want that, mom, I want that, and it just wouldn't stop. And when I saw the look on these parents' faces, I was like, look, I'm not gonna say anything because I have the fortunacy of getting up, is that even a word? Getting up out of my seat and just going somewhere else, as I don't have kids. These people do, and they're having to figure out how to have a good time without giving the kids an iPad. And in that very moment, I understood. I got it. I was like, I understand now why parents are bringing iPads to restaurants just so that they can have a moment of silence with their food. And then I was like, hang on a second. I never acted like this inside of a restaurant. What happened to the lost art of coloring books? Why does everything have to immediately be give this kid an iPad so they shut up? Because they're not just quote unquote shutting up, they're kind of shutting down in a sense. What they're doing on that iPad is so brain numbing to the point that they're not speaking to you at a restaurant, and that is not a good thing. That should be family time. That should be interaction. And whilst that was an unpleasant experience, I could really appreciate the fact that the parents just didn't immediately whip out a device to give to their kids. Now, enough about my Gen Alpha story. We're going to be looking at something rather concerning. Once again, this entire video is just
These kids can't read. They can't decode. They have no vocabulary, no background knowledge. I've never seen anything like it. For context, for 8 years, I taught a self-contained program for significant language-based learning disabilities. Like, it was the most restrictive environment. It was the step before being sent to a specialized school. And my 5th graders with significant language-based learning disabilities could write better than non-disabled 7th graders can now. They can't write a sentence. They don't know what state they live in. They don't know what region of the country they're in. They have no background knowledge. Most of them don't know who the president is. You know, they're coming to school with no background knowledge. They have very low skills. And yes, part of my job is to help them find those skills. And as a special education teacher, like, I'm obviously going to be working with students who require specialized instruction, but I'm not talking about specifically my students. I'm talking about students in the grade, period. And this was the case last year. They can't take notes. They can't even attend to a video. They can't even attend to a 3-minute video clip. I can play it, I can tell them what it's going to be about, I can summarize what the video did, and not a single one can tell me what the video was about.
This literally all comes down to the fact that a lot of Gen Alpha kids don't have a longer attention span or a stronger attention span than a 30-second TikTok, if that. Stretching these kids' attention span has kind of proven to be almost impossible at this point, and it's really scary considering what is causing the problem is in their everyday lives. COVID especially had a very large impact on the way these kids function on a day-to-day basis. I mean, isn't it kind of alarming that so many teachers are coming forward and spouting the absolute same shit every time? This is not the kind of problem that we want to be sweeping under the rug, you guys. As one way or another, we're gonna have to deal with the consequences of it.
No, y'all, can we talk about it? Can we please talk about it? Let's take a moment to discuss. Let's take a moment to debrief. Let's take a moment to unpack. So I'm not really understanding why they're not telling y'all. Like, we all know that the world is behind, like, you know, globally, like, you know, because of the pandemic and stuff. But I don't understand why they're not stressing to y'all how bad it is. Like, I'm not even trying to be funny, but these kids are... I'm going to just say this. I teach 7th grade. They are still performing on the 4th grade level.
This quite literally draws me back to my point before. There is such a huge generational gap between a millennial and a Gen Alpha, and it's nothing like I've ever seen before. It's that bad. A lot of these Gen Alpha kids seem to romanticize 2016. That wasn't even 10 years ago. I feel like, for me, 2016 is the 90s for us, but for Gen Alpha. Does that make sense? And the gap is so obvious, let me just say. There is no sense of urgency with this problem at the moment, and I don't know why. It's almost like the parents of these Gen Alpha kids don't really care what's happening either, as they truly think that none of this is going to affect them in the near future. And it's almost like some of these Gen Alpha kids who are failing in certain areas of schooling is due to not wanting to listen to authority, period, because their parents most certainly aren't an authoritative figure in their lives. And look, we already talked about my authority problem before, but I've always said this. It's likely if you don't already respect the authority of a parental figure, you're most likely not going to respect the authority of a teacher. Hence, not paying attention to what a teacher is trying to tell them, and it leaves them academically a few levels behind.
I don't care how you flip it, turn it, swing it, swindle it. They still performing on the 4th grade level. Ain't nobody talking about how they just keep moving, passing them on. They just keep passing them on, 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 passing them on. I can put as many zeros in this grade book as I want to. They're gonna move that child to the 8th grade next year. Ain't nobody talking about that. Why they not talking about that? Why they not telling y'all that y'all... And why don't y'all know that y'all kids not performing on their grade level? Why y'all don't know this? Why y'all don't know? Talk about it. Let's unpack. Because y'all be quick to talk about, oh, the teacher this, the teacher this, the teacher. It's your job, baby. I just got here 30 days ago. She was performing on the 4th grade level since 4th grade. Why we not talk? Well, let's talk about it. You the teacher. You supposed to be, again, she's been on the 4th grade level since the 4th grade. We in 7th grade now. So you let this child go 3 years and you never knew that your child was still in the 4th grade, ain't never left the... Hang it up, flat screen. And 4th graders being nice. I still have kids performing on grade K, 1, 2, and 3rd grade levels. I could probably count on one hand how many kids are actually performing on their grade level. So just imagine, you don't know that your child been on the 2nd grade level since the 2nd grade, and they now in the 7th or 8th grade? Are you joking right now? And these are future leaders, our future doctors, our future nurses, our future...
I feel like a lot of these parents do know that their child is performing at a poor level. They just don't care enough to try and fix the issue by being more present in their children's lives, apart from gifting them the new iPad every single year. Kids are less engaged in education more than ever before. And yes, whilst a lot of Gen Alphas can read, a lot of them can spell, a lot of them can write, it doesn't explain the high percentage of those who can't. And for me, it's enough of a significant number to be paying attention. Percentage of this generation is showing a resistance to education due to the fact that it is so outdated. It's not up to the times. And that is presenting itself as being a genuine problem in trying to keep these kids engaged. And no, I'm not saying to start using the words huzz and hog tour and skibbity toilet in essays or anything of the sort, but something sure as hell needs to change. It seems to be that doing things by the book, the same one that boomers were learning from, might not be the best structure for the generation of social media. Because mind you, Gen Z was the very last generation to experience life before social media took over into our everyday lives. Gen Alpha has access to AI too, meaning that the creative part of their brains are probably going to be due to using that constantly. 8th grade teacher here. So many of my students are reading at a 5th grade level or below. Some can't read or write at all. It hurts when I have to go and teach 8th grade benchmarks when they clearly need the basics still. Gen Alpha as a whole aren't quote unquote dumb. I fear that they are just victims of their environment. No, because this is insane, bro. Without the 8th grade context, this looks like the spelling of somebody at a prep 1st grade level with writing of somebody who's in the 8th grade. If this isn't proof of a decline in learning, then I really don't know what is at this point. The fact that so many teachers are repeating the same talking points on TikTok should tell you that something is really, really wrong. But my Gen Alpha kid is fine. Obviously, not all Gen Alpha kids are struggling, but it's a significant amount of a number to be highly concerned. But hey, what do I know, right? And here's what I'll end this video off with. Some parents really aren't taking the initiative to continue the learning at home. And no, I'm not saying homeschool a kid as soon as they're coming home from school, but where is the revision? Where are the questions being asked at the dinner table? Like, what was it that you learned in school today? Can you tell me a new word that you learned? Oh, what does factual mean? Tell me more about that. Is this even really happening at home? Are we cooked? Is Gen Alpha cooked? Something needs to be done and done fast at that, because these kids should be nurtured, not just have everything left up to them to figure out for themselves, because it seems like that's not working at all. So with all that being said, everybody, do you have a Gen Alpha kid in your life, whether that be a sister, a niece, a nephew, maybe a cousin, a child of your own, who is struggling at school and you just can't seem to figure out why? Let me know down the comment section below, or email me at dramakweensubmissions@gmail.com if you need a little bit of a vent. Thank you so much for your stay at Yappersville today, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and most of all, love your fucking selves.